Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair, board members, Chief Operating Officer, staff, and members of the public. A few housekeeping rules in order to minimize background interference, and of course, as a courtesy to your colleagues, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and mute all microphones and speakers on your computers, iPads, etc., unless you're speaking, of course. We'll do a formal roll call. Please respond here or present. Chair.
Present.
Vice Chair.
Present.
Member Adams.
Here.
Member Austin.
Present.
Member Gavin. Paula, I can see you. Present. Thank
Here.
you. Thank you. Member Wolf.
Present.
COO Sherrod.
Present.
Thank you so much. Chair, there are no members of the public who registered as required in order to provide comments. As such, we will proceed with the regular calendar. The first order of business of which is to adopt the minutes of the regular board meeting of Wednesday, January 26, 2022. Do I have a motion? Please call your name out, board members. Do I have a
Gavin,
motion?
so moved.
Thank you, Member Gavin. Seconded by
Austin.
Austin. Thank you, member. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
none opposed. Thank you so very much. We'll proceed to the reports section of the calendar. Chair, would you like to provide any opening remarks?
I'm going to yield time so we can get the reports in. Just recognizing so the board is aware that we continue to press our agenda for additional capital funding from all sources, including efforts in Albany to work through as the budget is being prepared up there. And also we continue to press our efforts on the trust and related options to that. I'm going to let the board reports actually fill, I think, us in on what has been a very tough year. This has been, there's been a shift, I think, in the way that the heating outages are starting to appear. And again, I think we're reaching the place where the lack of capital is eroding our ability to make repairs in full. And I don't say this in an alarmist way, I just say it that we have been able to deal with it so far this season, but it's been a hard season. I'm going to let the reports begin, and then I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion around the report topics. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The first report will be 21 to 22 heating season update by the Director of Heating Management Services, Javier.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Chair, Chief
Good morning.
Operating Officer Sherrod, board members, and all in attendance. My name is Javier Almodovar. I'll be presenting the 2021-2022 heating season update. So let's dive right in. So before we get started, I just want to give everyone a quick overview. This is HMSD, Heating Management Services Department, by the numbers. We have a total of 624 staff, full-time staff, that consist of management staff, frontline supervisors, skilled staff, frontline heating maintenance workers, and HPTs. HMSD has a total operating and personnel budget of $159 million. Currently, HMSD services and maintains 1,310 boilers. This number continues to decrease as developments transition to Abm Pact. We do have 31 mobile boilers that are managed by heating management. 6 are currently in our yard ready to be deployed for use where needed. 24 have been deployed and are either installed or staged at locations. And we are expecting 1 brand new one before the end of March. Our boilers average years are 26 years. And the average life expectancy of a boiler is actually between 20 and 25 years. Next slide. I'm sure everyone is familiar with NYCHA's apartment temperature requirement, 68 degrees between the hours of 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. when the outdoor temperature falls below 55, and an indoor temperature of 62 degrees between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., which are the overnight hours, regardless of outdoor temperature. Next slide.
Mr. Alvarado, may I ask a question before you move on?
Surely, sir.
These numbers, have they changed recently, or has this been the number all along? And is this the city numbers or NYCHA's numbers?
These are the city's numbers, and they recently changed. I want to say about a year and a half ago, they changed to what you see them now.
Okay. Okay, it's good. They finally realized that that wasn't enough.
That overnight setting has always been a problem for us. In
Oh,
the
yeah.
past. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But thanks, you're on top of it.
You're welcome. So this is where we are. As everyone can see, the total number of outages this heating season increased by 27%. We went from 1,074 to 1,480 this same time last year. So just to be clear, this comparison is just from October 1st through February 21st, comparing this year to last year for that same time period. What's also important to point out is that what also increases the number of planned outages, which increased by 48%. Why that's important is because these are conditions or issues that we've identified that can potentially become an unplanned service disruption. And so we do our best to try to plan when we do have mild weather to correct those issues that are identified during routine inspections. So the first thing, the obvious thing that drove some of these numbers up is the challenging winter this year. This year's winter has had some of the longest stretches of below freezing temperatures, with temperatures dropping into the single digits. We've also seen far more failures in distribution and failures caused by infrastructure related issues, which we'll get into in a few. With that said, the next slide will show where most of those failures have been. And so here it is. These are all the causes. This slide shows the different causes of outages this heating season by percentages. Obviously, the larger pieces of the pie chart show the causes with the highest percentages. While we did have failures in our boiler room represented in the blue, orange, and yellow, we had far more outages in other areas, with the biggest pieces within our distribution: building steam stops, supply steam risers, and boiler room steam stop valves. And then the other smaller numbers, excuse me, are causes that are internal or external factors that impact the heat and or the hot water services. Next slide. And so this slide shows the top 10 sites with the most outages broken down by the two types of outages. So why is this important? Well, when comparing the two lists, we can see that there are sites that make both lists. And these are sites where my department will do a deeper dive into the causes to find operational investment opportunities that can be made during the off season to improve the system performance for the upcoming heating season. As you can see, Woodside is on both lists. So is Lincoln, so is Astoria. The common denominator with those three sites is that all three sites have a mobile boiler. Lincoln is gearing up for a complete plant replacement. Astoria, we're finalizing burner and burner control replacement contract work. And at Woodside was Ida affected. And it was Ida affected just before the start of this heating season and on the tail end of $1 million investment in new burners and burner controls that was designed to improve the performance of that plant. Well, now that plan is running on mobiles, and we are obviously reinvesting in replacing those internal mobiles. Some pumps, feed water pumps, we're literally rebuilding a lot of the systems that are within the boiler room at Woodside.
Hey, Javier.
Yes, sir.
At Woodside, we lost all the stuff we put in, correct? Okay.
That is correct.
And then from the time of Ida till recently, we spent what, well over $1 million just putting up the mobiles and doing the other repair work?
That's correct. About 1.4 and climbing, because the mobile boilers are rental units.
Right.
And as you know, with a rental, we have a monthly charge.
Right. And that's 3 boilers now there, correct?
That's correct. 1 is ours, 2 are rentals.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. Another site that I wanted to point out is the Bronx River Addition, which is on number 5 on the heat side. Bronx River Addition has had 11 heat outages, and a lot of them were very long lasting outages resulting from distribution issues. And the thing about Bronx River is that Bronx River is a hydronic system, meaning that there's water heating up the convectors. And when they start leaking, when the distribution pipe starts to leak, it causes extensive damage throughout the building. And this building also requires asbestos abatement. So this is one of the examples of a development that I lose sleep over. One of the main reasons why I lose sleep is not being able to provide the services that I'm required to provide our residents. And Bronx River is one of those systems that I lose sleep over, because I don't know when it's going to get to the point where I just can't do anymore. That's the point we're at Bronx River. One of the sites that's not on here that has been spoken about quite lengthily lately is Carlton Manor. And the reason why I bring up Carlton Manor is because Carlton Manor is a perfect example of how existing infrastructure can negatively impact new construction. Carlton Manor has a new boiler room and has a new instantaneous water heater. But even with all that, residents were still experiencing hot water temperature fluctuations in the bathrooms. And what we found out was that the cause was directly related to existing tub faucets. And so with the collaboration of property management, MRST, and heating management's plumbing teams, we've begun replacing, NYCHA has begun replacing all of the tub faucets, and that's correcting the issue of fluctuating water temperatures at Carlton Manor.
Hey, Javier, it's Greg again.
Yes, sir.
So a couple things. This was new boilers and hot water. Was that Sandy related improvements?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
At Carlton Manor was, yes.
Yeah. So, but that did not cover the distribution lines and so forth inside the building, only the boiler itself.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. And that's why the extra plumbing work is needed that you just described.
That's right. And all that extra plumbing work is being done with in-house staff.
Right. Okay.
Using operating dollars, of course, to fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that pretty much ends my my presentation. If there's any questions, now's the time.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Adams, good morning, Javier. So
Good morning, sir.
let's start with these citywide numbers. Okay, so in one of our previous meetings, we discussed that when someone shows up to assist with heat being restored, the first thing they do is pull out the thermometers. Now, myself and other people who are turning on showers, boiling water, who are generating an inside heat of 68 degrees or more on their own, this works unfairly against the resident trying to get heat from the agency to restore. So when they're calling their intermediary supervisors and saying, well, this resident has a 66 degree, of course, if the shower is going, the heat is going, I don't think that protocol with the thermometer should be used until the heat is restored in the apartment by the agency. I mean, it's just not a fair assessment. You cannot say that NYCHA is maintaining the heat when people are doing their own to help arrives. In a quick breath, the response time for the most part in some areas has gotten better, but I'm saying, that thermometer situation is just not good.
So
it's just not a fair way to gauge. You come into the apartment, you say, hey, 68 degrees, but everything is going. In some cases, people are still burning ovens when they shouldn't be because people are cold. Technically, that citywide number should go up to like 57, 58, because outside of it's 58 degrees, you get a level of comfort that you might get in the apartment till help arrives. I mean, that thermometer situation with the HPTs is just, and I believe I was told, my recollection, that wasn't going to be done, but that has not stopped, and that really should stop.
Well,
So board member, I can respond to this one. That's one of the things that I noticed with the HPTs when they're taking the ambient temperature. It doesn't take into effect that there could be an external heat source that you described providing alternate heat to the unit. So we're changing the process to actually look at the temperature at the radiators in the units to determine if there actually is sufficient heat being produced by NYCHA in the unit. So that's where Javier's team is starting to change the policy, because you can get a ambient temperature of 68 degrees, but the moment you touch the radiator, it's 55 degrees. And the radiator is supposed to be somewhere between 120 and 130. So that's one of the process improvements that we're making as we change the heating department structure. We're also changing the way that they measure heat and respond to heat. So your observations are 100% correct, because I agree with you. The ambient temperature doesn't take into account a third alternate heat source that's heating the unit. So that is a improvement that's actually underway now.
And Sherrod, hey, it's
Well,
Greg. Does that mean if I'm a heating plant technician, I'm taking that reading like right over the radiator or right next to it? Is that what that?
You're touching the actual radiator coil
with the tip of the thermometer.
with the tip of the thermometer.
Okay, all right.
And then you're touching what is it called, Javier? The supply side riser on the left.
right, the left is the supply riser, and then the right is the return.
Okay.
Right. So we're looking at all three of those temps to actually see if there is heat, and then if there's circulation of the heat as well.
Okay.
Board member. So you are right on point when you say that ambient temperature is not going to be sufficient to tell us that the temperature is actually where the NYCHA is providing the actual temperature.
Okay, well, in my little 8th grade science class, whatever heat that we're trying to generate will go toward that cold area. Now, I understand you say it's underway, but they have not started. That change has not taken place.
No, it hasn't been fully rolled out. You're correct.
Okay,
it hasn't been fully rolled out.
Okay, but that means a memo or something have to be sent. And when the guys come, they will, do what it is that you said in the protocol, but that hasn't stopped. Now, heat rises, and in some cases where you'll put monitors in the apartment, you'll put them up higher toward the light fixtures, a little bit higher, above comfort levels, and that doesn't assess correct the amount of heat temperature. What I usually do is when the guys come, I say, listen, come in, just feel my risers and my vents. I have vents now, and then I said, when y'all restore the heat, if it's not too much trouble, come back and take the proper temperature. I'll turn everything off. That's what I do, because you're not going to get, even if they go near the window, near the riser, they're not going to get an adequate temperature with things going in the apartment to keep warm. That was the first point. But I understand it's in the process of working, but it didn't take place this heating system and in previous one. The outages as in the blue area that called what do they call again, Javier? I wrote it down. I'm looking at
Distribution.
Okay.
Can we call that? Put that graph up.
Would that be connected more to water systems or the steam systems? Because what you have done is implemented having staff, and thank you for that. In my development and other developments, where you have had this staff monitoring the situations, like here, has the situation gotten better? Because as Ms. Koch pointed out 2 years ago in her presentation, that staff and the boilers that you're trying to fix or replace or maintain could use a little kickstart, you know, and until help arrives. And now having that staff has just been key. It's made about a 75% difference here. And I think 2 more buildings to the right of me, I can't remember the addresses, with having staff here like you have that. And the chair alluded that, you know, y'all can't keep that going forever, but we either have someone here to help maintain the heat or we just stay cold. So I don't know what the option would be for that. I really don't know the answer to that. If it's a money issue and you won't be able to have staff here, we're just going to be cold. Because a lot of these systems will run. They just sometimes with the water, the panels and things like that, they just need somebody to do something until somebody can come to fix them. And I don't know how you going forward, how that's going to be done. But the staff, along with the equipment, even with the new equipment that you just stated, needs to be monitored. And even if you have someone in place that the boiler is working, you might have 2 more buildings where something happens, they can respond to in a 6 or 7 or 10 minute walk until help arrives. So having staff on site is very, very important. Hopefully that would be under consideration, because the other consideration is that we're just going to be cold, plain and simple. We need that staff to stay in place. It's made a complete difference here, and I think 3 or 4 more places. You would know more than I do since you have these assigned to buildings that I'm not aware of, but that makes a huge difference. And the numbers that y'all have, I don't want to go into the numbers because they're being monitored by legal aid and WPIX 11, and numbers just seem to be completely different. I don't even want to go down there, but the response time of 9 hours, that's the average. That is a long time. That is just after an hour and maybe an hour and 15 minutes, depending on what the conditions of the people in the apartment, the age or conditions, that is a long time. But I haven't heard that. I've heard that someplace in Queens, the development starts with a P. What is the name of it? Oh my God. Their average heat response was like 30 minutes to an hour. I said, okay.
I want to make sure that you're not confusing work orders with outages, because the work order response time may be a little bit less in some locations. But outages, the average is 9. And I just want to point out that that's 3 hours below the HUD requirement.
Okay, well, the HUD requirement doesn't reflect the human suffering. The numbers and stuff do not show cause and effect. What you did was you put people in place. Thank you again. And that has made a big difference. So those numbers are not reflected in this report, where you put people at, staff. And you've made a big difference in the day-to-day lives and comfort of the people that's living in there, like myself and others. So like I said, these numbers, not misleading, but don't truly reflect to what suffering is going on and then what is actually taking place and relieving that. And that's basically about it. From my understanding, I've gotten reports or conversations that some areas have gotten better. And again, I want to thank you for the implementation of staff to monitor some of these systems, because that's very helpful. These systems, I don't care how new they are, sometimes they have hiccups and they need somebody there to give them a little bit of water to drink so they can run a little bit better. That's basically it.
Okay, thank you, Member Adams. Let's see if other board members have questions. Vice Chair?
Yes. When we were NYCHA, this development, the only test that I would use, and I would never ask anyone else to do it, but I did it because when they would come in waving that magic wand, I would tell them, what I want you to do is put your hand on the radiator. If you can keep your hand on that radiator for more than 1 to 2 minutes, you're not getting sufficient heat. I don't care what that wand says. These days, it's a little different. We're under somebody else, and I mean, it's still not as, let's just say it's a work in progress. But the real question that I have is, Mr. Almodovar, at your nightmare place, I know that we would need an extreme amount of dollars to, would it help to change what is at Bronx River? And that, would that be feasible price-wise, or we just have to figure out what has to be done to make it better?
So this is Greg, Victor.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask Sherrod, we have to have an alternative plan for Bronx River.
Okay.
we've reached a point where we believe we're not going to be able to, we're going to have to close the building to effect the repairs.
Okay.
So we have met with the residents and we've met with the electeds. A lot of the work that I think is on this graph, the distribution lines, are the issues at Bronx River, and those repairs are so extensive that at some point we just won't be able to keep the system circulating correctly.
Okay.
So if I could ask Sherrod just to give a quick review of what we've done in terms of talking to the residents and the resident association and the leadership. We met yesterday with the state assembly member and Senate member. So we're beginning to brief folks on what Sherrod's about to describe for the approach at Bronx River. If he could step in, thanks.
So we have been working with the residents and CCOP at Bronx River for the last month, because the building is at the point where it is no longer a if, but it's a when we're going to have to vacate the residence. And we are working on two options: an emergency transfer or a longer term relocation of the residents. Under the emergency situation, at the point where Javier's team can no longer make repairs to that distribution system, and I can honestly tell you, they are roughly a couple of feet of pipe away from not being able to make the substantial repairs that's needed, we will have to emergency relocate the tenants. That is the absolute worst case nightmare scenario. However, my job is to prepare for that worst case nightmare scenario. We're identifying units right now in the communities in and around Bronx River Addition for the 65 residents that are in the building, so that if we have to move them, we can move them. Now, right now, we've got about half of the units that we need. So if it were to fail tomorrow, half of the residents will be able to be moved into other units. We got Marble Hill, we got Bronx River Addition, we got Sotomayor, and I think one other development. And then the rest of the families will be given hotel vouchers along with meal vouchers to go to a hotel. We also have our resident engagement team along with social services preparing individualized plans for those residents that may have medical equipment that needs to be moved. We're going to make sure that that goes with them. And in the event of an emergency transfer, we're going to wrap our arms around our residents and get them out of there as fast as possible. But the building is at the point where it will fail. There is no doubt in my mind it's going to fail. Our hope is that the failure happens after April, because after April, then we don't have to provide the heat that we need to, and we could do a longer term relocation where we open up the entire NYCHA to our residents. And if somebody wants a Section 8 voucher, we'll give them that as well. But it will be a more orderly, more encompassing, gentler relocation for the residents at Bronx River Addition. But right now, I have to tell the board, we are at the point where we are literally praying that this thing holds up to the end of April. If Javier can Band-Aid it, wrap it in some plastic, or whatever he needs to do to hold it to the end of April, we'll have a more gentle relocation. But if we get to the point, which we are, again, I have to be honest with you all, we are only a few feet of pipe away from having to relocate them under an emergency program. It'll be quick, it'll be intense, but they will be taken care of, and we will shut that building down and button it up and come back and engage the residents on the future of what that building will look like.
Well, that sounds like a very good plan of action. But if you're going to rely on April, we're in the middle of a climate change nightmare. And I remember some Easters that it actually snowed. So we can't rely on that. We just can't rely on the weather with the rosary beads. That plan that you have seems more feasible.
Well, no, I have two plans. I have two plans: the emergency plan and the long-term plan. So the long-term plan, I'm praying that it makes it to the point where the amount of heat that we need to provide is no longer required. So whatever that shutoff date is, that's a shutoff date. It could be the end of April, it could be the end of May. But the emergency plan is an ongoing insurance policy that if it breaks before that moment, we will wrap our arms around our tenants and get them out of there as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, well, like I said, there have been small samples of conversations that the response time has gotten better, and there seemed to be some action. But I think you need to take that April scenario out of there, because the Easter Bunny is not going to bring heat. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to bring it. But thank you.
What I find a little strange though, and this is just an observation, that Bronx River Edition is only on one side of the chart. I'm surprised that the hot water wasn't affected as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's because the failures have been on the heat distribution piping alone, not so much on the hot water system. Two separate systems. So
Okay.
it's only been on the heat side.
Oh, okay. Because I know there are developments that it's one in the same system.
Right.
Yeah.
So if one goes, the other goes as well.
Right.
I didn't know that it was two separate systems at Bronx River Edition.
Right. And if you get a chance to go to the building, you'll see that it physically looks like Dr. Seuss's worst nightmare, because we have to open up almost every wall and every hallway. And we have to keep it open because we may need, every time the data is showing that every time Javier's team makes a repair, it breaks in another spot. The moment that the repair happens, they walk out the door, and no more than 24 to 48 hours, they're right back over there, because the repair caused more pressure to make it up, which finds a new spot to break, and it breaks.
Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
So, and I have to tell you, based on the trajectory, once it makes that turn to the unit and goes to that floor, if it breaks underneath that tenant floor, that's it. There is no repair for that. That is shutting down the water system and moving everybody out, because Javier cannot shut the water, cannot isolate those breaks up underneath the concrete. That's all hot water coming out of that system. And that it's hot enough to physically hurt somebody seriously. So that is a emergency shut off, and we're running in there with buses and everything that we can to get our residents out of there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other board members have questions or comments.
Jackie, I'm sorry, it's Greg again.
Yes, Chair.
This raises the question of what to do with the building. And to Sharad's point, we hope that we can do a more gentle relocation, but we have the same issue. We're going to make a list of buildings from this season that I would classify as fragile. And I can't emphasize enough when you're talking in the community about the need for capital. Now, we have some ideas on what we can do for this particular building about raising capital. We'll discuss those, I think, as they mature with the residents. We want to make clear that this is not about losing the building over the long run. This is about raising the money to repair the building, and that families who want to come back would have the opportunity to come back through a right of return. So again, I think it shows this is probably our starkest example of how quickly on some of these systems we're moving out of ability to repair into the capital need. And I think for myself, this feeling that is happening more systemically is the thing that concerns us going forward. So we do need to raise that money. We do need the trust, the bill that we have up in Albany, and we need to really push hard to make sure we get the capital back in these units that is long overdue. But I was really pleased with the relocation plans when I saw them. And we're also, to Javier's point, going to look at our PM program very carefully. And I hope some of the buildings that have been fragile this year, we can sustain for another season while we work on getting the capital.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Javier, for that great presentation. We'll move on to presentation number 2, and that's a pact.
You have two hands up.
Oh, I can't see any hands up. Whose hands are up, please?
I see
I
Ms.
had,
Wolf.
this is Paula. I had my hand up to just comment on the fact of the importance of the capital, because I know we've picked the top 10 developments most in need, and my guess is the correlation is very high to these buildings. So I just wanted to amplify the importance of the capital with these top 10 buildings and developments we've talked about.
Okay, and Member Wolf?
Yeah, thank you. My question was how much we are, when we're talking about, because this is clearly a very, very compelling and not in a good way case for capital at all levels, but certainly at the state level. And Greg, just wondering how frontal you're being on doing earned media on this, communications, getting it to every stakeholder. Because it's quite jarring.
Yeah, it is. We have briefed. This building is in Congressman Torres's district for the time being. We've briefed him. We've briefed both of the Assembly member and the Senate yesterday, Senator. So now we want to make this. We have a discussion, for example, Friday with the Assembly Housing Committee. We're going to start to say this much more directly, I guess, if you want. Because this is to close a building, even the planned closing that we're talking about, is really the first time we've had to think about this. So I'll be talking with Brian and Barbara about how we want to message this, but we are going to message it up in Albany and elsewhere because this is there's a bit of a watershed moment with this particular property. So that is coming. We wanted to brief the electeds immediately affected before we kind of expanded that circle first, but that is coming. If you've got thoughts on what to say, we'd be glad to chat with you offline, but
yeah, happy to.
Yeah, because we'd be glad to do that because I think there's behind this another group of buildings. I'm hoping we can preventive maintenance our way through another season, but they have distribution issues as well. And but we are going to message this in Albany, and we're also going to advise HUD and the Southern District as well, because I think they need to hear what we're facing.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Sure. Thanks, Emma. Thank you.
Greg, I do have a question. This is Maggie Austin.
Yeah, Maggie.
So I know that NYCHA is part of Brian Benjamin's portfolio. Has he been engaged at all?
Yes. The Lieutenant Governor, we've had several meetings. I've talked with him one-on-one a couple of times now. We keep them apprised of this, and I think this piece of information Intergov is going to forward through. I don't know if we've done that yet. If Brian Honen's on the call, he could speak to it, but we are going through this with him. And, you know, this goes back to the tension that we have between the ideas that we've put forward, the capital idea that we put forward in the Preservation Trust. And I think that disconnect on the other side is that, you know, folks have not embraced this idea. The residents have not embraced this idea. And I think that puts a lot of the electeds in the middle trying to figure out what to do. My own view is you put the capital out there and we can make the investment, but that's obviously a biased view based on our situation. We have talked to the Lieutenant Governor at length and engaged, and he is engaging. So it's not it would not come as a surprise to him. But at the same time, I can't say that this is translating into an actionable moment yet in Albany. I don't know is Brian Honen on? Does Brian care to comment?
No. Chair, he's not.
Okay, all right, but Maggie, we could get we've really worked hard to try and convince people that this is an idea that we have to do. We either going to raise money through this method, or we're going to have to raise money through some other method. And we've communicated that very clearly to the Lieutenant Governor, the governor's staff as well. We've briefed them on the Preservation Trust. So Albany's fully aware of what's in the bill. We're hopeful that we get the bill this session, but I don't want to be projecting a sense that we have some kind of groundswell for this yet in any way, but they're all informed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great.
Yeah, Joe.
By chance, did he happen to mention about supposedly the $250 million that he was going to push, in an envelope somewhere towards us? No, because
that'll be a big, if it's in small bills, it'll be a big envelope. No, what we talked about, I know what you're referring, what we talked about is two things. Circulating in Albany now is a request for operating funds because we are constrained by the rental income loss that we're experiencing. That has an immediate effect on our budget. And so we are asking for that. And there is a capital ask as well, Joe. And both of those are in play. I don't know their exact status, but both of those are under discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see no other hands raised, so we will move on. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Javier. We'll move on to our next presentation, which is a Pact resident engagement update presented by Simon Kowitsky, Vice President, Portfolio Planning of the Real Estate Development Department, and Leroy Williams, Director of Community Development Department. Simon and Leroy.
Good morning, board members and NYCHA colleagues. Good to be with you today. Leroy and I are going to give a presentation that's very similar to the one that we gave at the end of last year, but we were asked to come back and present and give you an update on some of the different initiatives we've been working on regarding our community planning and engagement work in the Pact program. You can go to the next slide. So just as a quick refresher, Pact leverages NYCHA's HUD's rental assistance demonstration program, and NYCHA made a commitment as part of the NYCHA 2.0 plan in late 2018 to comprehensively rehabilitate a third of our housing stock, or 62,000 apartments, through this program over the coming years. I'll share some information about where we are towards that goal in just a few moments, but just to lay out, the way that we view this program and our mission here in real estate and community development. Yes, we always want to emphasize that our number one priority is investing in the stability of our housing and making those really critical physical repairs to the bricks and mortar of our housing and making sure it's safe, sustainable place for our families to live into the future. But we also want to recognize that this is a really important once in a generation opportunity to make really meaningful investments that can address other resident needs and priorities as well. And that can be manifested through improvements to systems like security or the resilience of our properties, but also to community programs and social services and the different facilities and amenities that our residents need to support themselves and their families. Underpinning all of this is our commitment to make sure that residents are fully engaged in the planning process and can meaningfully participate in those really critical decisions that impact them and their communities in the future. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the initiatives we've been leading to do that, including creating a standard approach to how we do this engagement across all of our projects in our portfolio. Next slide, please. So just to recap, again, Pact is one of the main tools that we have for making comprehensive repairs to our properties. These are some of the key buckets that we look at when we communicate what those repairs can look like. Of course, HUD requires us to make a baseline set of investments that address the documented physical repair needs at all of our developments, but we have set a higher level of baseline standards, and are, of course, are always setting those stretch goals to achieve our ambitious sustainability and energy goals as well. But we often see, well, we will see through all of our PACT investments, significant upgrades and improvements to the sites and grounds, our landscaping, our pedestrian pathways, our outdoor gathering places. In our buildings, our common areas and hallways, our stairwells, our laundry facilities, our lobbies. Building systems, really importantly, our boilers and hot water facilities, our roofs, we're always looking at on-site generation, the plumbing and electrical systems and elevators. In the apartments, we will replace all kitchens and bathrooms. We'll typically replace flooring and windows. This is also an opportunity to really go behind the walls and identify and remediate some of those issues that are really endemic to our properties, leaking pipes, pest issues, other things that are really plaguing our residents. We can do that because we're investing such a large amount of capital all at once. And we need to work closely with our residents to really identify where those pain points are and those problems that they experience in their units. Again, I mentioned this earlier, it's not on here, but security is also a big focus of our program, and one that we work closely with our residents to craft. Next slide, please. Here's where we are in our progress towards that 62,000 unit goal that we set out for ourselves. So all in all, we are engaged with over 35,000 apartments across 133 developments in every borough. We are actually already in construction on about 15,000 apartments comprising 58 developments. And there is about $3.4 billion worth of capital repair work already underway at those projects. We are currently in the planning and resident engagement phase for another 75 developments comprising just under 20,000 apartments. Looking at the estimated repair cost of those properties at $3.5 billion. I'll pass it over to Leroy Williams to talk about the engagement process that we undertake at each development. Leroy?
Good morning, board members and colleagues. So we look at our engagement process in 4 phases. The first is a listen and learn, because again, our residents are the ones that really know the properties better than we do. So we look to educate residents about the PACT program and then learn from them, what the community needs are. We make sure we do regular meetings with the associations. We do a lot of distribution of materials and flyering at that point. We launch our PACT project page, our email and hotline, so that as we go through this process, residents are in tune to what's going on. Also, we do resident surveys, and we conduct this door by door. So, just in the past month and a half, my staff have done almost 1,800 resident surveys to really give us a real look at what the resident needs are during that process. The second phase is design. So we're here to understand the community goals and priorities, and then select a PACT partner. In the next slide, when I go, we're going to be talking about how residents are a part of that PACT selection of the partners. So again, ongoingly, we have workshops. We incorporate the community goals and priorities that we've seen in the past from surveys and meetings into the RFEI. And then the RAs participate in the selection of PACT partners. Yesterday, we were doing our round 10 review committee, which went very, very well. I actually got a call when we were from Ms. Harrell in Brooklyn saying how much fun it was and educational it was. So I'm glad that they're feeling a part of the entire process. Then this is getting to the nitty gritty with the refinement of the actual work that will be done for the development. So through workshops, through meetings, through fairs and training, all these things that are happening, we really want to get a sense of, we know what needs to be done. So it may be brickwork, it may be roofs, so whatever it is needed, boilers at particular developments, but there clearly are things that residents only know and they want in their specific PACT part and program. So we work with them to make sure we refine that so that when we get to the fourth phase, which is the implementation and the transition to new property management and conducting repairs, we have a good sense of a mix of residents' needs and what needs to be done. I want to point out that I know I met with Alku recently in the last month, and he was talking about, really wanting staff at the properties doing, the day-to-day work, making sure residents don't have 5 different places to go to get the same information. My team was already working on a plan for having office hours now at every Pact development. So starting on April 4th, we have a plan to roll out at least a day of staff time will be at a particular property so that residents will know they don't have to wait to the next particular meeting or, make a phone call or go onto the Pact website to ask a question. There'll be staff at the properties to make sure that they're getting their questions answered. Also, as part of the last update that we gave to the board, board member Gonzalez asked us to send information to all the converted sites to make sure they understand that, again, they're still part of NYCHA, all of the rules and regulations that goes behind it, who they can contact if they have issues or concern. And I just wanted to point out that Vice Chair Gonzalez, we have started that mailing out to all of the converted developments.
And I excuse me for interrupting. I really appreciate and thank you very much. The information was received, and you'd be surprised how many of the residents, all of a sudden a light bulb went off and they said, wait a minute, we didn't know this before, but now you do. And it was very helpful information. And moving forward, the new developments that are going to be transformed are going to be better informed and a lot happier with the process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide. So the Pact partner selection. So beginning last year, we really heard a lot of feedback in the past about residents wanting to be part of the selection of their Pact partners. We did a tremendous amount of work, as everybody know, at the Fulton Chelsea developments. And we kind of mirrored that effect with our round 9 projects and round 10 that we're doing now. So, our residents are sitting side by side with NYCHA, interviewing the actual candidates for the Pact partnership and actually helping select who their partners will be, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that have to work with the Pact partner on a day-to-day basis with their new management, their new social services providers. They have to go through the actual extensive 2-year rehab. So we want to make sure that, they're really part of, the agreement and the process of doing this. We also have a partner in Citizens Housing and Planning Council, who's a housing advocate that helps us and the residents review the proposals, discuss the trade-offs, if any, also helps to develop the kind of questions they want to ask during the interview. So I think this has been a tremendous help to residents. It really helps them break down. As we all know, when you get these big binders of information, it's really hard to understand for me. I'm new to the real estate world, so I only can imagine, someone that's never done this. So I've been seeing a vast improvement in the residents' understanding of this. Next slide. And I'll turn it back over to Simon.
Thanks, Leroy. So last year we talked about an initiative called the Pact Resident Planning Fund that we were launching. We're pleased to announce that we've now launched it. We've actually also rebranded it, and it's called the Pact Resource Team. The goal of the Pact Resource Team is to, similarly to the experience we had at the Fulton and Elliott Chelsea project and that other housing authorities across the country have done at their developments going through these kinds of processes, is pair residents with independent third-party advisors who can provide direct technical assistance to residents, to resident leaders, serve as a bridge between the housing authority or the real estate organization and the residents who are engaging in the conversations and the deliberation about the planning work. And it's really to make sure that residents have the support that they need to come to the table and sit with us. And as Leroy mentioned, do those interviews, review those binders, advocate for themselves to make sure that they're achieving the kinds of things that they want to see in their community. So we procured a team of consultants led by Public Works Partners, LISC NYC, Pratt Center, and Public Policy Lab. They came on board in the latter half of last year to help us really build out the infrastructure for this initiative, to do needs assessments with all residents associations that are going through the PACT program, understand what kinds of assistance they would like, and then pair them up with those qualified independent providers. And so the goal, and why we kind of changed the name to the resource team, is to build that bench of technical assistance providers that we will be pairing resident leaders up with. The resource team, again, led by Public Works Partners and LISC, has already started to meet with resident leaders from different PACT rounds, including round 9 and round 11. They're starting to meet right now with our folks in our round 12 projects to conduct those needs assessments and help then, as a next step, pair them up with those independent advisors. We also put out a call several weeks ago to, again, build that bench. It was a public open call, it was an RFQ to garner interest from New York or regional consultants, organizations who are interested in helping to advocate for public housing residents, housing and real estate experts, and researchers. We generated a lot of interest. There was a pre-submission conference that was held last week. We had over 70 different organizations on the line. So hoping to really build out that team, and confident that we'll have some great partnerships to forge with our residents in the near future. Next slide, please.
Before you move on, I'd like to ask a question.
Sure thing.
Public Works Partners list New York City Public Policy Lab and Pratt Institute. Are we paying them to do this work, or are they getting monies from somewhere else?
Thanks for that question. We are paying them to conduct this work. We are actually paying for all of this work. So the organizations that are going to be providing the direct technical assistance will also be paid by NYCHA through this contract. And it's Public Works Partners and LISC's job to make those contractual arrangements and to ensure the quality control of the technical assistance that's provided at each site.
Okay, now the next question, because obviously I've had calls regarding Public Works Partners. So these are resources or agencies or organizations that NYCHA put together to talk to the residents in the event they need assistance with technical issues or whatever it is they or implement programs at their sites. If you're at a site that has their own resources and kind of are concerned with what the actual reason for them to be there is, they do not necessarily have to take that professional consulting firm and just tell them go somewhere where they're being needed. Right. Is that correct? This is not a must. This is not a must thing where they have to deal with Public Works Partners.
That's correct. This is completely optional. And we created it as a menu of services or a menu of options that you could use part of these services, you can use none of them, or you can use all of them. It's very flexible.
And at any given time, they can contact whom to let them know that they don't want their services?
Well, Public Works Partners is reaching out to the resident associations at each site. So once they make contact with those TA presidents, if they're not interested in meeting, then that's totally up to them to make that call once they reach out.
Okay, so they have to tell Public Works Partners not anyone else?
If you know of specific groups that are skeptical or don't want to be contacted, I'm happy to take that information and can pass it along to
But
the team.
they can't contact NYCHA because we have project managers on both sides,
Right.
myself and Simon's side. And if they have any suggestions or if they just don't want to talk to Public Works, they can talk to us.
Exactly.
And at any given time, you guys know at what point each development that's converting is at. Have they already signed paperwork for this? Have they moved along and are receiving services? When I say you, I mean you, Mr. Williams, and you, Mr. Kowitsky, know exactly at what point of the process these partners are with the developments, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
There's a policy analyst on my team who you've met, Heather Beck, who manages this initiative, and she meets with them regularly and oversees the implementation of the program.
Okay. That's what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. We can go to the next slide. So these are the menu of services that I mentioned. Again, this is just a guide. When the Public Works and LISC team sits down and meets with resident associations, they go through some of these different areas of technical assistance that can be provided through this initiative. Of course, always top of mind is just enhancing the level of education that we're providing to residents, not only to resident leaders, but across the entire community. Discussing the obligations and rights and protections of our residents at each site undergoing a PACT transition. Again, as Leroy mentioned, partnering them up with groups to help spearhead the PACT partner selection process. And we've been working so far with Citizens Housing and Planning Council to do that. Other engagement support, sometimes residents are interested in conducting their own surveys or their own workshops to really understand and start to tease out what their vision is for the site. And so these consultants can help them do their own planning processes that would then inform the ultimate end result of the project. Social services, as I mentioned, is a really critical focus of the PACT program. We require our partners to dedicate budget to bring on-site case managers and social workers to each PACT development. And there's also a process by which resident leaders work with NYCHA and our partners to actually select who those providers are. So having an independent advisor there to help guide them through that process is also really critical. Again, I mentioned design support. Maybe there's interest in really understanding and crafting a detailed plan around security or open space or redevelopment. And that's where we can bring in architects or urban designers to help think through those possibilities. Economic empowerment, really critical, wanting to amplify the hiring opportunities that are made possible through these PACT investments, increase opportunities for outreach and getting people trained, or any other form of economic advancement. And then property management, really critical. Again, as you know, through the PACT program, these developments are managed by our private partners, not by NYCHA. And they have very specific practices that they implement, and really important for residents to be able to understand what the approach of the team is and how they need to adapt or shift their approach to property management, whether that's taking how they respond to emergency calls, how they implement security, how they operate waste management or any other kind of component of their property management plan, all gets closely vetted by residents, and they can use the support to help think through what the right strategies look like for their community. Next slide, please. Back to Leroy.
Yeah. Just wanted to point out that, of course, during the time, there was a lot of construction being done and a lot of our converted developments. And we have a handful of developments that are done with their completion of construction at Baychester Houses in the Bronx, Berry Street, South 9th Street in Brooklyn, and Matanzas in the Bronx. And, we thought it would be prudent to bring residents from developments that are going through the process to see converted and finished developments. So last year, we conducted 14 tours to those 3 developments with over 250 resident leaders that came out, met with the associations and residents by themselves, so they can ask, real and honest questions without NYCHA and the PAC partners in the room, so that they can get a real feel of, onus of the process, understanding what happened. Every time we go to Baychester houses, Ms. Gross, lays out that she gave it to me for 2 years, about the process. But then at the end of the day, she says, openly that this was the best thing that happened to Baychester houses, right? So, we really think it's important that, we bring more residents out, to see converted developments, to see all of the upgrades, also look at, what has been done, what can be taken over to their development. Maybe it's something that they don't want, that they've, seen at the particular development, because every PAC project is different. So we're gearing up for our new stretch starting in April, where we will be inviting the developments in different rounds to come out to the converted developments. And we also, because people outside of developments that want to learn more about PACT, there also will be a time where we will openly invite residents from throughout the city so that they can be a part of it and understand it better, because without them understanding the process, we're going to get more and more fear about the process. So, we conduct surveys, and these are some of the things that residents have given us feedback on. And every time we try to get better and better in the way that we do this process. Next slide. And then now open for questions or any feedback.
Well, I can only,
Hello?
sorry.
Good morning. Just one area, the social service area. Going forward, do you think you could have one or two entities that could come to a meeting with y'all and just explain what it is that they actually do? Because do they just, a person coming in and need help with some money or some issue with the lease and putting people on there or whatever, do they give them an 800 number, tell them to go call it, or do they make the appointment? Right. Do you have someone that could come in and explain to the board and say, hey, this person comes in, and we made an appointment for them to go to agency A, agency B, what actually was done? Yep. Because and realistically, because sometimes on the residents' own accord, they don't do things that they need to do, which is on them, and they don't come over. We lose people. We lose, Bay Plaza, Batances. A lot of people just didn't make it, and I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying sometimes people don't really understand, or they're a little afraid. But do you have any entity that you are partnering with? So like Reeves has Robin Hood and other entities that they team up with to help with their training. Do you have anyone that be willing to come in and say, hey, the resident needed to know this, we sent them here, or we made an appointment? Absolutely. Or I mean, because that would be going forward, that would be helpful for me to know, because they just said that they got a really, really fair shot. And if they didn't take advantage of it, then at least I know that I can rest knowing that, you'll had the best available opportunity to come back. Because the numbers dictate, there are people that get lost in the process and do not come back to these apartments. And I'm not saying it's the agency fault. It's, it could be maybe just a little bit more proactivity in the actual resources and help that you're stating is available. Like, what's the name of it? Is it Catholic Charities? Is it, Children's Aid Society? Who is doing this actual stuff to help the people facilitate coming over if they have problems? I would like to see that, please, if possible, going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely do that. And just so that you understand, there's kind of like two main parts. It's a service coordination part where they do link the resident to, job trainings, or if it's, help with paying rent or whatever it is that they particularly need. But then also, I think we mentioned earlier, Simon talked about actually having a social worker on site. And, many people here have been in NYCHA many years, and we used to have actual social workers in our management offices. We kind of went away with that for a time, but as we convert to Pact, we make sure that there's actually on-site social workers at the site to help residents with whatever their needs are, maybe hoarding or mental health or whatever it is that's needed.
Yeah, because that aspect is very important, because we had one here when I first moved here, and because of the reason going, she actually facilitated with my daughter to help me get a home attendant when I had knee surgery.
Right.
I didn't have to run. I didn't have to, do this. She actually facilitated the paperwork, got a family member involved. I signed stuff. I didn't have to try to get on a train or some way to go down and talk to somebody else.
Right.
What is the level of involvement and proactivity with this help? Going forward, it would be helpful, because when I worked with Heather, she said that I would be seeing this, and I have not seen that aspect of it. I say going forward, though.
Yep, we can make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Board members, any other questions? So there are no additional questions or comments. Thank you very much, Simon and Leroy.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Chair will now proceed to the calendar items 1 through 9. Sergio, you're up, number 1.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, board members. I am Sergio Paneque, NYCHA's Chief Procurement Officer. I am presenting item number 1 on behalf of the Office of Supply Management and Procurement. Funding authorization in the amount of $4,750,000 is requested to enter into an agreement with PropTech LLC, a New York City certified minority-owned company, for the purchase and delivery of office supplies and furniture. The proposed agreement leverages pricing and terms and conditions of the cooperative agreement competitively awarded by Sourcewell, a national service cooperative and local unit of Minnesota government. With the board's approval, the agreement would commence on March 1st, 2022, and continue for 3 years through February of 2025. Given this proposed contract is for goods, a Section 3 plan is not required. A vendor name check was requested on October 21st of 2021 and is still pending. There will be no award to the vendor until a VNC is issued and no findings are identified to preclude award. Therefore, the Supply Management and Procurement Department respectfully recommends that the members approve this award resolution. Are there any questions?
Yes, good morning, Sergio. The person that did this presentation originally had asked them buying the furniture and all this, and I can understand maybe office supply. $4 million is a lot of money. So what are y'all buying? I mean, I have an idea, but like, where is it the usage, and how does it benefit the residents or any of the centers or anything? Does it benefit or will they have access to get some things that they need at these places as well? Because that's quite a bit of money just for a stapler and chairs. And, I'm just, I'm being a little sarcastic, but I'm just saying, I need to know some specifics, like what typically were you buying, where it's going, and who will benefit?
No, it's a good question, board member. So it is $4,750,000 over the next 3 years. So approximately $1.5 million a year. It will be for office supplies and furniture available to everyone who currently purchase office supplies or furniture. So as far as from a community standpoint, any community centers that is currently purchasing office supplies through the housing catalog and the Oracle system will be able to source through this minority-owned contractor. The biggest benefit for NYCHA is going to be a savings and a reduction of pricing. So we're leveraging our spend across the whole enterprise, where we're currently right now have multiple vendors providing for this category. So we're rationalizing our vendor base across the whole portfolio. And in addition, we'll be realizing then next day and 48-hour delivery. So currently, depending on the commodity item, folks in the community or whatnot may be taking a significant amount of time for us to source, since we're going to multiple vendors. In this case, the service delivery is much more shorter. So we're saving money and a shorter time frame.
Okay, and I just guess that there's some type of warranty in place for repairs or reimbursement or something, or whatever, when we talk about furniture and items, right?
Sure. For every single item, there's obviously a warranty that's associated with that item. And
Okay.
that would be serviced by the vendor in particular, as opposed to having to have multiple vendors and trying to find out who it was that we sourced an item from. Now we know it is one particular vendor that's responsible.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, board member.
If there are no additional questions or comments, thank you, Sergio.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Item 2, William Brown. There you are.
Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
proceed.
Good morning, board members. My name is William Brown. I'm the Vice President of IT Strategy and Planning, presenting on behalf of EVP Patty Bayros of the Information Technology Department at NYCHA. Thank you very much for your time today. I'll be presenting item number 2 for your consideration, which is a request to increase the contract capacity of the agreement with Lexmark International for on-site printer maintenance services in support of multifunctional devices, also known as MFDs, for the period of March 8th, 2021 through March 7th, 2023. The existing agreement with Lexmark is for 1 year with a not to exceed amount of $892,526.99 and included a 1-year renewal. This request is to exercise the 1-year renewal option in order to continue provision of services for 1 additional year. The new agreement will increase the contract capacity for a new not to exceed amount of $1,785,053.98. Approval of this contract capacity increase with Lexmark will provide the necessary maintenance services and support for the authority's printing and scanning needs, including but not limited to providing on-site maintenance, repair, and monitoring of the multifunctional devices usage. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to take any questions.
There appear to be no questions. Thank you, William.
Thank you.
And moving on to item 3, Anika.
Hi, good morning, board members. My name is Anika Lescott, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the New York City Housing Authority. Today, I'm requesting authorization to approve the issuance of the authority's single audit report for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020. The single audit was conducted by Deloitte & Touche for the purpose of forming an opinion on the financial statements and to issue the single audit report in accordance with the Single Audit Act of 1984 and its amendments, through which we are required that all recipients of federal financial assistance of $750,000 or more publish within 9 months of the close of each fiscal year a complete set of financial statements presented in conformity with generally accepted accounting principles and the government auditing standards by independent certified public accountants. The single audit report for the year ending December 31st, 2020 consists of the following reports and schedules, which have been provided to you. The audited financial statements, which were approved by Board Resolution 21-6/30-1. For this, Deloitte issued an unmodified opinion, concluding that the financial statements were a fair representation of the authority's financial condition. In addition, the single audit report includes required supplementary information for HUD, and including our financial data schedules and schedule of HUD program closeouts, along with the independent audit report. And please note that Deloitte did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over our financial reporting. Lastly, the single audit also includes a schedule of findings and question costs in prior year's findings. And again, here, note that Deloitte did not identify any findings in 2020 or in 2019, so these reports are blank. Okay, I'm requesting that the board approve such resolution and permit the issuance of the 2020 single audit report in accordance with the authority's bylaws, delegation record, and other applicable authority procedures and documents pursuant to the foregoing terms of this board resolution and such other terms and conditions as the general counsel or the general counsel designee deems appropriate. Any questions?
Anika, this is Paula Gavin. I just wanted to again compliment the team for this exceptional performance on so many audit reports, to have them all so clean. So just wanted to compliment you formally and your team.
Thank you so much, Board Member Gavin, and I will pass this along to Jeff Lesnoy, who's the NYCHA controller. He has managed this process along with me over the last 3 years, and the team has really done a fantastic job. We have a lot to be proud of.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, thank you, Anika.
Thank you.
We'll move right along to item 4, Spencer Edwards for Marissa Schaefer. Spencer?
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Spencer Edwards, and I'm a senior project manager in the real estate development department. Pleased to be presenting board resolution number 4 for your consideration. NYCHA Real Estate Development is requesting authorizations related to the Pact conversion of Audubon, Bethune Gardens, and Marshall Plaza. Pact standing for Permanent Affordability Commitment Together. At times, I'm going to refer to this particular Pact conversion as the ABM Pact project, as shorthand for Audubon, Bethune, and Marshall. To facilitate this Pact conversion, we are requesting authorization to submit documents to HUD for Pact conversion approval, enter into 1 or more 99-year leases and other related documents with NYCHA's Pact partner, enter into a pilot agreement with the City of New York, provide financing to the transaction, and to take such further action as may be necessary to effectuate the transaction. The authority's primary goals for the ABM Pact project are to complete necessary capital repairs at Audubon, Bethune Gardens, and Marshall Plaza, and to stabilize federal subsidy for those developments. The structure proposed for this transaction will accomplish these goals and will ensure that the authority maintains an interest in and control over the project sites in perpetuity. Upon Pact conversion, ABM will undergo a comprehensive renovation, and the delivery of property management and social services will be greatly enhanced. I'm going to start by providing a brief overview of the Pact partner selection process and the parties involved in the transaction, and then I will share an overview of the proposed financing and ultimate benefits of this transaction. And for a little background on Pact, NYCHA's Pact program entails converting units from Section 9 program to more stable project-based Section 8 funding. For this transaction, RAD and Section 18 are the 2 conversion methods that will be utilized. RAD, or Rental Assistance Demonstration, is an innovative HUD tool to preserve public housing and address capital needs. Under RAD, public housing authorities like NYCHA convert the funding source that supports a development from Section 9 public housing subsidy to Section 8 subsidy, which enables NYCHA and our development partners to leverage private debt and equity to finance repairs. NYCHA also uses the Section 18 disposition process to apply for tenant protection vouchers, or TPVs. The TPV funding is then project-based at the converting developments. Combining TPVs with RAD increases the amount of HUD subsidy, and ultimately this helps us fund repairs in many of NYCHA's highest need developments. So to identify a qualified and interested Pact partner, NYCHA issued a request for expressions of interest, or RFEI, in September of 2019. That RFEI consisted of 5 distinct transactions. And the final transaction from that round of 5 projects is the ABM Pact project I'm presenting today. Audubon, Bethune Gardens, and Marshall Plaza collectively consist of 557 residential units in Upper Manhattan. If you're joining through a computer or other device, the location is shown on the map on your screen. And if you're joining via phone only, it will be attached as Exhibit B to the board resolution. So for the ABM Pact project, the authority received 8 proposals. And after competitively reviewing these proposals, NYCHA conditionally designated the following Pact partner team in the spring of 2020. Dante's Partners as the developer, Webb and Brooker and Faria Management as property managers, Apex Building Group and ETC Pyramid Companies as general contractors, and Masholo Montefiore Community Center, or MMCC, as the nonprofit social service provider. Additionally, NYC Housing Partnership Development Fund Company and Settlement Housing Fund are additional nonprofit partners. For a little background on the teams, Dante's Partners and Faria Management are both 100% minority-owned companies and certified as small business enterprises under the District of Columbia's Certified Business Enterprise Program. Webb and Brooker is a New York State certified minority-owned entity. Apex Building Group is a New York City certified minority-owned entity. And NYC Housing Partnership, Settlement Housing Fund, and MMCC are nonprofit entities. ETC Pyramid Companies is a non-minority entity. In terms of the HUD approvals, NYCHA submitted RAD applications to HUD in 2019 pursuant to Board Resolution 1910-3029. HUD reviewed those applications and issued its initial approval for the transaction through its commitment to enter into a housing assistance payment contract, also known as the HAP, on December 5th of 2019. And as a next step with HUD, NYCHA will be submitting a RAD financing plan detailing the proposed transaction in this quarter of 2022 for HUD review and approval. So moving on to the project financing and deal structure. The anticipated total project cost to fully rehabilitate these three developments is approximately $181 million. The approximately $123 million construction scope includes significant renovation of each unit, including new kitchens and bathrooms, as well as rehabbing critical building infrastructure and expanding the building's amenities. NYCHA has reviewed the scope of work proposed and confirms that all items in NYCHA's physical needs assessment are addressed. The scope of work will be finalized prior to closing on project financing and will continue to be presented to residents prior to the start of construction. In terms of payment to NYCHA, the budget includes a total acquisition value of approximately $31 million, of which approximately $2 million represents existing debt and additional costs borne by NYCHA that will be repaid at closing. The balance of approximately $29 million will be held by NYCHA as repayment for NYCHA costs and one or more notes repaid from cash flow, referred to as the NYCHA note, which will accrue interest. The transaction is anticipated to be funded by the following sources: an approximately $118 million loan originated and serviced by Berkadia Commercial Mortgage and federally insured through HUD's 221D4 loan program. Approximately $29 million from the aforementioned NYCHA note to be repaid through project cash flow. Approximately $23 million in federal, state, and historic tax credit equity. Approximately $8 million in interim income from operation of the project site. And finally, approximately $2.3 million from the Pact partner in the form of an equity contribution. Berkadia will act as the primary underwriter and lender for this transaction, and HDC, the Housing Development Corporation, will assist in overseeing the financing of the transaction. The transaction remains subject to HDC sponsor review, which will be received prior to closing. The transaction also remains subject to HUD's RAD and Section 221D4 approvals prior to closing, and the final budget is subject to approval by NYCHA, HDC, Berkadia, and HUD, and remains subject to change as the transaction is finalized in the lead up to conversion. And finally, regarding real estate taxes, it is anticipated that there will be a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot agreement with the city through which taxes will be abated given the permanently affordable requirements. Okay, moving on from finance into residents' rights, benefits, and engagement. In order to successfully convert through Pact, residents of the project site must be current NYCHA public housing residents, and they must sign a Pact Section 8 lease with the Pact partner. The Pact Section 8 lease was developed by NYCHA and has been updated over time to include feedback from residents, tenant advocates, and stakeholders. The Pact Section 8 lease cannot be changed without NYCHA's approval. Residents have been attending information sessions that explain the Pact Section 8 lease, such as how they can add members onto their lease and how they will pay rent after conversion. Residents have also been provided with information about the free legal services hotline offered through the Legal Aid Society and are encouraged to utilize those services as needed. In terms of resident rights, the residents of the project will benefit from HUD's RAD resident protections, which are mandatory and included in the terms of the lease, the control agreement, and regulatory agreements. These are just some of the agreements that memorialize all of the Pact partners' ongoing obligations. Resident protections will also be included in the HAP contract and the HUD agreements recorded against the project site. So under Pact, residents will receive the following benefits: substantial rehabilitation of their units, common areas, building envelope and mechanical systems, dedicated property management staff assigned to the development. There will be an increased delivery of needs-based social services. There will be no permanent displacement and residents will have access to hospitality suites during construction. All residents on the HAP contract will continue to pay no more than 30% of their adjusted gross income towards rent. And if a family is currently not paying rent at this level, they will be phased into paying the appropriate rent amount for their household size and income over a 5-year period. And finally, residents will continue to have rights and protections consistent with what is provided under the public housing program. In terms of engagement, the authority and the Pact partner continue to engage with residents on the upcoming conversion. NYCHA and the developer have held 6 combined meetings across the sites since designation in March of 2020, with a pause on resident engagement during the height of COVID-19. Resident engagement resumed in March of 2021 through resident teletown halls, hotlines, mailings, meeting with resident leadership, and other safe, socially distanced, or remote methods of engagement. Residents are regularly advised of their ability to access the Legal Aid Society's hotline to discuss any questions they have regarding the conversion. As it relates to hiring, the Pact partner has provided a hiring plan that provides Section 3 hiring and training opportunities, as well as other economic opportunities, which will include no less than approximately 46,720 Section 3 labor hours, approximately 15 non-construction permanent positions, occupational safety and health administration 30-hour training for up to approximately 31 residents, and construction safety training for up to approximately 50 participants. And as it relates to closing, we are estimating that this project will close in or about April 2022. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Yes, good morning. Hello?
Good morning.
Okay, so as I previously stated, the one entity of legal aid is not really that viable anymore because they're understaffed. It's very hard to get through. And going forward, hopefully I would like to see at least 2 to 3 different options for people coming into this program. The help they're getting in detail, like what assistance, who else is on board in giving assistance, because this one entity is just not enough. It's just not. Our residents have multiple problems. And like I said, there's an issue with this legal aid, trying to get through, trying to get set, it needs to be a little bit more hands-on stuff. But like I said, going forward, I will be looking in the RAD, Pact presentations, more than one entity engaging with residents to get help. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There are no additional questions or comments. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you all.
We'll move along to items 5 and 6. Steve, are you on, or CPD's representative?
Hello, I'm Joy Cinderbrand, representing Steve Lovesey. He's not available today. I'm the Vice President for the Recovery and Resilience Department, and I'm here to present items 5 and 6 for your consideration. Item 5 is CPD seeks authorization to first rescind Board Resolution 21-7/28-12, which authorized the award of contract number 2110533, and award this contract to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, P&K Contracting, Inc., for roofing replacement and rooftop structure renovation at Woodside Houses in the amount of $21,450,000. In the original board resolution, the board authorized the award of this contract to GEM in the amount of $18,992,556.68. But subsequent to the board authorization, GEM declined to hold its bid price past the 120 days from bid opening date. That delay was due to the length of time required to approve GEM's vendor name check and the delay in completion of the net liquid assets chest. The second lowest bidder, P&K, submitted a cost proposal in the amount of $21,450,000. This is 25% higher than the authority's cost estimate of $17,136,000. And the Capital Projects Division had a post-bid meeting with P&K to determine the variance is attributed to inflation of material costs and delivery changes across the market due to COVID-19. The conclusion is that P&K's bid is acceptable. Therefore, CPD is requesting to rescind the previous board resolution and award the contract to P&K, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, in the amount of $21,450,000. Any questions? Second, item 6, CPD seeks authorization to ratify a contract capacity increase to the agreement with eBuilder, Inc. for construction project management software support and maintenance services in the not to exceed amount of $915,984.48. This contract capacity increase is being presented to the board because the cumulative value of this contract capacity increase, together with previous funding increases and contract capacity increases, exceeds $1 million. This ratification of a contract capacity increase is required in order to cover the software subscription costs for the second 1-year renewal option term and support additional changes to the software. To prevent interruption of services, CPD directed eBuilder to perform the additional work prior to board authorization. This work commenced on December 27th, 2021, and is continuing through December 26th, 2022. CPD is requesting authorization to ratify the contract capacity increase to the agreement with eBuilder in the amount of $915,984.48 for the software subscription costs and the additional assigned work. Are there any questions? Thank you.
There are no questions, no comments. Thank you so much, Joy. We'll proceed to items 7 through 9. Marvin.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Secretary. Good morning, Chairman Russ, board members, Chief Operating Officer, and others gathered here. My name is Marvin Walton. I am the Vice President for Public Housing Operations for the Borough of Manhattan. I have the pleasure of representing the Public Housing Operations Division this morning and will be presenting 3 items for your consideration. Item 7 seeks authorization to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the New York City Department of Probation, commencing on March 1st, 2022 and continuing through February 28, 2025. This MOU initially is a 3-year contract that includes 2 one-year renewal options. The total amount not to exceed is $13,886,760 for the initial 3-year period. Under the MOU, NYC DOT will provide crews that will perform various maintenance and janitorial tasks at NYCHA developments citywide. The crews will be used to supplement existing authority staff on an as-needed basis. Are there any questions?
Yes, good morning. So that's basically what I see now, like at the East River, some places, people doing community service related to their situation, cleaning, picking up garbage, like that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
No problems. Any other questions?
Okay, you may proceed, Marvin.
All right. Item number 8 seeks authorizations to ratify an award of a requirement contract in an amount not to exceed $13,162,520.77 to the sole responsive and responsible bidder, American Pipe and Tank Lining Company, Incorporated. This will be a 2-year requirement contract that provides for a 3 one-year renewal options. This requirement contracts provide for repairs of gravity roof tanks citywide at NYCHA developments. Are there any questions?
Okay, no questions. Okay. Proceed.
Thank you. Item number 9 seeks authorization to ratify a contract capacity increase in an amount not to exceed $688,335.20 to this requirement contract awarded to Gloria Construction, Inc. for basement epoxy floor finish installation. The contract did not require initial board authorization, and as a subsequent amendment for an initial 2-year term with one-year renewal option, to increase the not to exceed amount in order to fund the continued provisions of services during the remainder of the 1-year renewal option term, which commenced on September 6th of 2021 and is continuing through September 5th of 2022. This requirement contract provides for finishes of basement epoxy floor installation in basement areas, boiler and tank room floors, and corridors citywide. Are there any questions?
There are no questions, so thank you so much, Marvin. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay, before we begin the approval voting, I'll just take attendance again. Before voting, Chair, you're still with us?
Present.
Vice Chair?
Present.
Member Adams?
Present.
Member Austin?
Present.
Member Gavin?
Present.
Paula is still with us. I still see her. And Member
Yes, I
Wolf.
said present.
Oh, thank you. Member Wolf.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Chair, 9 items were presented for board approval. May I have a motion to approve the 9 items?
Austin,
Vic-
so moved.
Okay, I'm sorry. Who made the motion?
Austin,
Austin.
Thank you. Seconded by,
Victor Gonzalez.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Thank you so much. Chair, being that all matters before the board today have been addressed, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So move, Gonzalez.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Seconded by,
Gavin,
Seconded, Emma Wolf.
I heard Wolf, I think.
Yep.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And none opposed. The recorded end time of the meeting, 11:44 a.m. Thank you all. The next NYCHA board meetings are scheduled for Wednesday, March 23rd. The first, the voting meeting will be at 10 a.m. and the second meeting on the same day, March 23rd, will begin at 1 p.m. Everyone, thanks again and continue to stay safe. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Okay,
You'll
bye.
have a good one.
Bye-bye.